Today's lesson is Taiwan shaken by biggest earthquake in 25 years. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to talk about something that happened several months ago, but of course most of us still remember it. It was that nasty earthquake that took place on April 3rd earlier this year, and it was quite a strong earthquake, and pretty much everybody was affected by it.
It was indeed. It happened just before 8 o'clock in the morning, as most people were on their way to work or getting ready for work, and it was definitely a big shock for anyone on the eastern side of the island specifically, but all over to the western side and to the north as well. So yes, we got a big early wake up by the moving earth. I think here in Taipei, it kind of made the morning commute, everyone's morning journey to work. It threw that into chaos. I think one of the MRT lines got damaged and will stay shut down for quite a long time as they're going to be repairing it, I believe, into next year as well. But of course, it was in Hualien that most of the damage happened. We all saw the dramatic pictures of buildings that had fallen over, or at least started to fall over. But the good thing was that the death toll, the human impact, was relatively low, especially compared to earthquakes of the past. So let's find out about this big earthquake, the biggest in 25 years, as it says there in the article, and we'll get all the latest information on both the event that day and what has happened since then. Taiwan shaken by biggest earthquake in 25 years. At 7:58 a.m. on April 3, 2024, a powerful earthquake struck Taiwan's eastern coast. The quake measured 7.2 on the Richter scale and was the strongest to hit Taiwan since the Jiji earthquake in 1999.
Okay, it's time for us to break down the first paragraph. It basically introduces us to this topic. At 7:58 a.m. on April 3rd, 2024, a powerful earthquake struck Taiwan's eastern coast. So that's how we introduce the topic for today, by talking about that very earthquake which took place back in April, which was about 4 months ago. Okay, so again, it was a powerful earthquake. We get earthquakes in Taiwan all the time, but they tend not to be very powerful. We kind of feel the room shaking a little bit, and we look at each other and think, hey, was that an earthquake? Yeah, I think it was. But this one was much more severe than that. It was a powerful earthquake, and it struck. It attacked Taiwan's eastern coast. Again, the epicenter was in Hualien.
Yes, it was. So there we have the exact time, the date, and the location. It says the quake measured 7.2 on the Richter scale and was the strongest to hit Taiwan since the Jiji earthquake in 1999. That's also known as the Nantou earthquake, or the 921 earthquake, as a lot of people here will know and probably remember if you're old enough.
I remember that earthquake. I was actually in Taiwan at the time. Well, actually, I wasn't. I was living in Taiwan, but at the time, I had actually gone on a trip to the USA. So I missed that earthquake, as I did the last earthquake, too. I happened to be in the USA at that time, too.
Well, okay. So when you leave, we get nervous.
I was wondering about that. It seemed like an interesting coincidence, especially because I was in New York City at the time of both of those earthquakes. And I very rarely actually go to New York City, so that's kind of interesting.
Well, next time you go to New York City, I'm going with you.
Right, to avoid the earthquake in Taiwan. Maybe I better not go there anymore to save lives in Taiwan. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part.
Hualien, which was close to the epicenter, was the worst-hit county, with infrastructure suffering severe damage and videos showing half-fallen buildings and landslides in Taroko Gorge. Thus far, there have been 18 confirmed deaths and more than 1,155 injuries, while 2 individuals remain missing. The cleanup, which began even while aftershocks were ongoing, is expected to be a long, slow process, with some areas likely requiring years to rebuild.
大家好，第二部分我们来看 severe 这个单字。它是形容词，意思是十分严重的、极恶劣的或是严厉的。例如 The severe winter storm caused the airport to cancel all the flights scheduled for this evening. 严重的冬季风暴导致机场取消了今晚排定的所有航班。或者 Jamie felt her punishment for lateness was too severe. Jamie 觉得 Jamie 的处罚太严厉了。
Okay,
或者 Jamie felt her punishment for lateness was too severe. 或者 Jamie felt her punishment for lateness was too severe. 或者 Jamie felt her punishment for lateness was too severe. Jamie 认为他迟到所受到的惩罚太严厉了。
Okay, so we're talking about Hualien as being the epicenter. So Hualien, which was close to the epicenter, was the worst hit county with infrastructure suffering severe damage and videos showing half-fallen buildings and landslides in Taroko Gorge. So I mentioned this word before, the epicenter, which is basically where the earthquake came from, the center of the earthquake, the epicenter, the main point of it, the bullseye, I guess you could say, the center of it. And yes, this was in Hualien, and therefore Hualien County was the worst hit. Now, of course, as you know, Taiwan is divided into cities and counties, like Taipei City and New Taipei City, but then you've got counties like Hualien and Yilan, they're still counties. So Yilan Xian or Hualien Xian are counties. That's what the word we use. And this is the worst hit county or the worst hit part of Taiwan because, of course, all of the terrible pictures came from Hualien, especially of that one building that was kind of like Taiwan's version of the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Exactly right. So, of course, the building suffered, but it also says the infrastructure suffering severe damage and videos showing half-fallen buildings and landslides in Taroko Gorge. Yeah, we'll get to that later. Infrastructure, basically the things that governments build that sort of provide services and networks around a country. So we're thinking of roads, we're thinking of the water system, we're thinking of the electrical system, we're thinking of railways and things like that. Big projects that the government builds over many, many years or decades that provide services and, improve lives and improve efficiency around a country. But when you lose that infrastructure, when the power goes out, when the water stops working, when the buses and trains stop running because the rails and roads are damaged, then big problems ensue because of that. Big delays, big interruptions to normal daily life. So there was severe damage to the infrastructure. Many roads, many tunnels, bridges as well, of course, those dramatic pictures of the missing bridges along the East Coast Highway. That will all have to be fixed, and that will all take a lot of time and money because of the severe damage, very serious damage. If something is severe, it's serious, it's powerful. In many cases, it's not really good. We don't usually say, I had a severe good time or something like that. No, I had a severe injury maybe after an accident or something. So usually if it's big or powerful or important or definitely noticeable in a negative way, like a severe storm, severe winds, a severe accident, things like that. And so, yes, we had videos. We saw these news videos, both from people's cell phones and also once the news crews got down there, this film of half-fallen buildings that hadn't completely fallen or collapsed. They had begun to fall. They were no longer safe, but people were still able to escape from them, which was a definite blessing. And then there were landslides in Taroko Gorge. Those pictures are harder to come by because, of course, the news crews couldn't get up into the gorge. It was far too dangerous. But that's where some people were trapped for days and maybe even longer because a gorge is a very narrow sort of depression into the earth. It's kind of like a valley, but a valley might kind of slope down on the sides more gently, not as steeply as a gorge. So if you have the surface of the earth and then you imagine a big cut in it or a big slice in it with rock walls that are not too far from each other on either side of this lower area, this deep depression in the middle of it, that would be a gorge. And at the bottom of the gorge, you'll probably have a river running because river always follows the lowest and the fastest course. And in Taroko Gorge, they have built a wonderful road that runs along this river with these giant rock walls that rise above your head for hundreds of meters on either side. So it's very lovely, but it's also an area that you don't want to be trapped in because usually a gorge has only one or two entrances, and that's what happened because of these landslides in this very narrow valley or gorge.
Yep, a landslide is when parts of the land come sliding down as a result of an earthquake or a typhoon or something like that. So there were landslides in Taroko Gorge, and thus far there have been 18 confirmed deaths and more than 1,155 injuries. while 2 individuals remain missing. So these are the statistics thus far, or up to the present time. 18 people have died. We have confirmed the deaths of 18 people, which I think is far less than the 9/21 earthquake.
Oh, definitely. That was thousands.
They had quite a large death toll in that earthquake, even though they were kind of similar in intensity. And yes, indeed, we've had a large number of injuries as well, but 2 people are still missing. There are 2 people that we don't know about in terms of their whereabouts. We just don't know where they are. They probably got lost because of the earthquake. They're probably dead.
Still missing in the gorge, probably, unfortunately, victims of the landslides as well. The cleanup, which began even while aftershocks were ongoing, is expected to be a long, slow process, with some areas likely requiring years to rebuild. So yes, after a big mess is made, whether it's a human-made mess, like your kids had a birthday party and invited all their friends over, that made a big mess of your living room, or it could be a big mess because of an accident or a disaster or something like this, there will be a cleanup required. Now, to clean up, as 2 words, that is the verb. I have to clean up the kitchen because I've made a big mess while I was cooking dinner or something. But that act, what you are doing, you could use it also as a noun, a cleanup. All right. So if there's a big chemical spill, the cleanup will be very difficult and you'll require specially trained people. But if you knock a cup of coffee off a table, the cleanup will be relatively easy. You pick up the broken cup and you wipe up the coffee and then you're done. So this cleanup job after a big earthquake, well, it's expected to be a long, slow process. As we said, this will take years in some cases for some things, and it will cost a lot of money and people will need to be patient. But this is very impressive. It says the cleanup, which began even while aftershocks were ongoing, even in the hours, days, weeks after the earthquake, as the ground around them in Hualien was still shaking with some of these aftershocks, these earthquakes that happen after the major or big earthquake. People were already out there with their machines, and workers were out there repairing the roads, repairing the power lines and the broken pipes and all that stuff. I guess they would just stop work as the ground shook for a few seconds and then back to work. So that's very impressive. People could have been frightened, and I'm sure many of them were, but they still understood that their job is important. But it will be a long, slow process to rebuild things or to do the cleanup, and both, actually, the cleanup and then the rebuilding, with some areas requiring years. I think Taroko Gorge will probably be closed for a good long while because there's probably a lot of roads and tunnels that need to be checked and fixed and whatnot.
Okay, we're at the end of the second part of our lesson. Here's the third part.
Yet, even as the tragedy unfolded, moving stories began to appear. A Greek tourist, Dimitris Belbas, was called a hero for guiding people to safety, while interviews with cute search and rescue dogs brought a little happiness. But perhaps the most significant positive outcome was the relatively low number of deaths, which suggests that safety measures implemented after the 1999 earthquake have generally been effective. This, combined with Taiwan's calm handling of the rescue efforts, only helps strengthen its image as a nation that's well prepared to deal with natural disasters.
第3部分看到 tragedy 这个单字，它是名词，表示灾难、不幸，也可以是悲剧作品的意思。例如 The tragedy of losing their daughter was more than the couple could bear. 丧女的悲剧让这对夫妻无法承受。或是 We are studying Western tragedies in English class. 我们在英文课学习西洋悲剧作品。继续看到动词 unfold， 它的意思是形式或故事披露、发展、展开。例如 The plot of the novel gradually unfolded, keeping readers hooked until the end. 这部小说的情节逐渐披露，让读者入迷直到结局。也可以说 The news report covered the events of the election as they unfolded. 随着选举活动展开，新闻也报道了这些活动。再来介绍 rescue 这个单字，它是名词，表示解救、救援或是营救。我们可以说 Several rescue teams were sent to the area to search for the missing fishermen. 有好几支搜救队被派往该区寻找失踪的渔民。又或者说Firemen came to the rescue of a cat that was stuck in the tree. 消防员们前来救援一只受困在树上的猫。 接着看到名词 outcome， 它的意思是结果或是后果。例如 Zach was happy with the outcome of the baseball game. Zach 对棒球比赛的结果很满意。又或者说 The outcome of the surgery was successful and the patient is recovering well. 手术的结果非常成功，病人恢复得很好。再来我们看到 measure 这个单字，它是名词，指的是措施或是办法。举例来说Runners should take certain preventative measures to guard against injury. 跑者应采取一些预防措施以防止受伤。又或者说 Regular exercise is a key measure for maintaining a healthy heart. 规律运动是维持心脏健康的关键措施。最后看到动词 strengthen， 它表示巩固或是强化、加强。我们可以说 Going through difficult times together strengthened the couple's relationship. 一起经历艰难的时期，巩固了这对夫妇的关系。也可以说 You should strengthen your understanding of these theories if you want to do well on the exam. 如果你想在考试中取得好成绩，你应该加强对这些理论的理解。
Okay, it says here in the third part, yet, still, even as the tragedy unfolded, moving stories began to appear. So yes, even as the tragedy unfolded, even though we were hearing stories about bad things happening, we're talking about this tragedy, which is a terrible thing that happens, and to unfold just means to happen or to occur. Like, how will the war unfold? Like, what are the enemy going to do? How are they going to attack us? And what's going to happen? So as it unfolded, as it began to happen, we began to get moving stories from the earthquake that were quite moving, quite emotional.
Exactly. A Greek tourist, Dimitris Belbas, was called a hero for guiding people to safety, while interviews with cute search and rescue dogs brought a little happiness. Yeah, you might have seen this in the paper. Trapped there in Taroko Gorge with a number of other tourists was this Greek tourist. I believe he had special skills. Even though he didn't speak much Mandarin, he managed to help this group of people who didn't have the experience he had. He managed to help them and guide them out one at a time or two at a time, get them out of there. So that was really good. And of course, the news was filled later on, days and weeks after, with interviews with cute search and rescue dogs and many of the brave search and rescue people who were in there helping others who were in need of rescuing. To rescue is to save from a dangerous situation. You can rescue someone, use it as a verb, or you can talk about a rescue dog or rescue workers, rescue planes, things like that to save people who need saving, whose lives are in danger.
And it goes on to say, but perhaps the most significant positive outcome was the relatively low number of deaths, which suggests that safety measures implemented after the 1999 earthquake have generally been effective. An outcome, of course, is just the result, the way things turn out as the result of something else. And this was a positive outcome. It was a terrible earthquake, but not that many people died, at least compared to the number of people who died in the 1999 earthquake. So it tells us or suggests that safety measures that were implemented after the 1999 earthquake were actually very effective. A measure, of course, is something you do, something you perform to achieve a certain kind of result. So these are safety measures, requirements for buildings and things like that. And they were implemented or they were put in place, they were begun after the 921 earthquake, and therefore they've been pretty effective.
That is good news. And this, combined with Taiwan's calm handling of the rescue efforts, only helps strengthen its image as a nation that's well prepared to deal with natural disasters. Everything was handled very professionally, in other words. So not only did the buildings survive and all of those new changes and rules have worked, but there was also calm handling of the rescue efforts. People kept their heads. They didn't start to panic. And this helped to strengthen, to sort of reinforce Taiwan's image as a nation that can handle its own situations, that can help other nations, because we have experience here and we can put this knowledge and this experience, this new wisdom of natural disasters into good effect, into very positive and useful effect here in Taiwan. So good job, everyone.
Good job. Hopefully we won't have a severe earthquake like this for a long time. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第2部分以及第3部分一共出现3次 while， 那它是当连接词用。那我们这边就来整理一下 while 当连接词的不同意思。第一个呢，它可以表达虽然尽管，那么意思就会跟 though although 一样，用来引导让步副词子句。像我们可以说While the car is old, it's still in good condition. 尽管这辆车子旧了，但它的车况还是很好。好，那第二个意思，它可以表达然而。那这时候 while 是用来连接2个对比或不同的陈述，意思就会相当于 whereas。举例来说，While Ryan likes to travel with his friends, his brother prefers to travel alone. Ryan 喜欢跟朋友一起旅行，而他哥哥喜欢独自旅行。好，那第3个我们可以用 while 去表达出像 during the time that 的意思，也就是在什么期间啊，与什么同时。那这时候是用来引导时间副词子句。例如 The phone rang while he was taking a shower.他洗澡时电话响了。好，那补充一下 while 当这个意思来解释时呢，如果连接的2个子句主词一样，我们可以省略掉 while 后方的主词，然后把动词改成分词。这个动词原本是主动的话，我们就改成现在分词 VING。如果是被动的话，就只要保留过去分词 PP， 所以就会被简化成 while 加上分词 VING 或 PP 的形式了。例如 He often listens to podcasts while stuck in traffic。他被困在车阵时常听播客节目，那这时候 while 后面就直接接了分词 stuck。 好，那我们看到课文第3部分，它有一句说到，或许最重要的正面结果是死亡人数相对较低，这表明1999年地震后实施的安全措施普遍上是有效的。文中它用到 implement 这个动词来表达实施，我们来学它的字首字根。好，看到PLE 或者是 PLI 或是 PLY 这一类的字根表示完全的、充满的或填满。那在 implement 这个字当中，它的字首 I am 是来自 IN， 表示强调。那么 PLE 表示 fill， 也就是充满。那我们可以用使、充满、完成去联想到它有那种实施啊、履行或是贯彻的意思。好，顺便补充2个带有这一类字根的单字。第一个是 plenty， 好，它的字根 PLEN 表示满的， TY 是名词字尾，合在一起 plenty 就表示大量、充足。那第2个补充的是 supply，它的字首 SUP 是来自 SUB， 表示从下方。 PLY 表示加满，那从下方来补给加满，应该可以联想到 supply 它有供给、供应的意思咯。好，那以上今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Severe. Mr. Kent warned the class that any cheating would result in severe punishment. Tragedy.The gas leak caused a tragedy when it led to a fire that killed several people. Unfold. The drama between Lola and Jack began to unfold when he criticized her new haircut. Rescue. A rescue team immediately arrived on the scene after the distress call was received. Outcome. The outcome of the treatment was less than ideal, so the patient may need an operation. Measure.Various measures have been introduced to make the factory more efficient. Strengthen. Studying regularly can strengthen your understanding of the subject matter and improve your grades.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter. The question is, what immediate actions did you take and what was your emotional state during the earthquake on April 3rd?
When the ground began to shake, I immediately stopped tying my shoes, which is what I was doing, getting ready to leave for work, due to the fact that the building was shaking and I didn't know if I would be going to work that day. And then I called out to my wife to see if she was awake, and she was.
Well, it's interesting because at the time of the earthquake here in Taiwan, I was in the middle of watching a Broadway show in New York, and during the intermission, we got the news that the earthquake happened. So what did I do as a result of the earthquake? Well, I was sad, but I continued watching the show.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.